Sean Salisbury here for Open Sports. Let's talk about some of the things that are going on in the NFL coaching and players-wise here just since Sunday, since the playoffs have been decided. Obviously, we'll pick our playoffs, and I'll break down each game for you as the week goes on. But here on this Tuesday and head into the rest of the week, here's what's happened so far. Some shocking moves as head coach, some kind of in between of firings, and some not so surprising, and there's going to be more to fall. There may be as much as 8 to 10 coaches fired this year, which is unbelievable, and it's a sad commentary, but it's a results-oriented league. First of all, start with Romeo Crennel. You know what, in Cleveland, Romeo had them right last year. People say the schedule was too easy for the Browns. They're not far off. A lot of egos on that team. There's some youth on that team. When you're down to your fourth quarterback, you're not going to win games. When your starting Pro Bowl quarterback from last year doesn't come out and plays well, it doesn't play well, it's going to hurt you. And that's exactly what's gone in Cleveland. But somebody will fix it. The GM, Phil Savage, who had such a great run, you know, as an executive in Baltimore, is out there too. So they're making complete changes. And Eric Mangini, which was a semi-shocking move to me, to get Eric Mangini out, fire him from New York. Not shocking that he'll interview with the Cleveland Browns, and probably more unless he takes that job now. Eric Mangini can coach also. He turned the Jets into a pretty good team and got things going on. But now with the Bill Cowher carrot dangling out there, and if I'm any of these teams, and I said it before here on Open Sports a couple days ago, I'll say it again. If you've got football power and are going to give football power and the coaching power to Bill Cowher and about $8 million, you've got a chance to get him. The Jets are going to interview him. What a great gig for Bill if it all of a sudden pops open and it's sitting there for him. It'd be a great opportunity. But every opportunity, whatever job Bill Cowher wants, Bill Cowher can get, I assure you, and there's going to be more come open. So, you know, depending on, and the Jets are going to make room in their front office to give him power as a GM also to accommodate is the word for Bill Cowher. There you go. Mangini out. He'll find his way around. Obviously, Romeo Crennel out. They wouldn't have got to this point at head coach if they weren't good coordinators or good position coaches, because the truth of the matter is head coaching's tough. It's brutal when you're relying on some 22-year-old kid to make a play for you every week, and maybe he doesn't care as much as you. Rod Marinelli didn't forget how to coach. Neither did Romeo Crennel. You look at Rod Marinelli, people across the league will tell you one of the best defensive line coaches in the league. Didn't work out as a head coach. Not a whole lot has worked out as a head coach for the Detroit Lions. And you know what? But the players need to take some accountability, okay, on all these teams. You know, my man Jack Del Rio, and he's not been fired yet, but, you know, when this video comes out, you never know what's going on. Let's hope Jack doesn't, because I know he's a hell of a coach. What, he all of a sudden forget how to coach? No, he didn't forget how to coach. He can coach. Buffalo decided not to pull the trigger on Dick Duran. He will stay as the head coach, and that's good because they started good in Buffalo, played bad football, then played a little bit better near the end. And you know what? It's a young team, and Dick Duran, let them get to. That's one thing. You got to have some be in sync. You got to get some rhythm going. You got to get some continuity going. Buffalo, I think it's a wise move to keep him. And like I said, some of these other coaches that are so-called hot seat, you better be really, really wise before you do it. The Jets pulled the trigger on Mangini. Some of these others haven't pulled the trigger yet, but there's going to be some that are, and I think some shouldn't. But Mangini out, Crennel out. Rod Marinelli handled it great. He knew at 0-16. You know, if 0-16 doesn't matter who you are. I don't care if, God rest his soul, Vince Lombardi, you know, came back, and then all of a sudden, and Tom Landry, God rest his soul, and then Belichick, Parcells, and all of them came back, and we'll put them all in one and coach the Detroit Lions this year. They won't go win 6 games. I can promise you that. So players are the ones, for the most part, that make a difference. And anybody who tells you anything else is clueless about football. There are some difference makers. I will stress that. Every head coach in this league is not a difference maker, okay? We look at the new guys, Mike Smith, John Harbaugh, and Tony Sperano. We think they're difference makers because of what they did to their teams, but we start to look at some of the talent on Baltimore, because John Harbaugh now sustained this 3 years in a row, and John's a good football coach. But before we start crowning these people, you know, almighty, let's make sure that they sustain it for a couple years, because you know what? We've seen Dick Duran was the king when Buffalo started on this run. Man, young team, great. You know, heck, Mike Martz, who's fired as an assistant in San Francisco, was the genius of football when he had the St. Louis Rams winning a Super Bowl with Dick Vermeil as his head coach. He's fired and out in San Francisco because of personality and differences as far as philosophy goes. So all these things that go on, players need accountability, okay? Rod Marinelli could just as easy go be the head coach somewhere else and they could win 10 games, okay? So before we just start pointing the finger. Now some coaches, you know, deserve to be fired, and Rod Marinelli had to be out. Cam Cameron, when Miami wins 1 game, got to get him out. I understand that. But you know what? It doesn't mean they can't coach. Look what Cam Cameron's doing with the Baltimore Ravens now as their coordinator. So please, players must make plays. But the biggest shock is Mike Shanahan getting fired out of Denver. And you know what? I've said for a long time that Mike Shanahan seems untouchable. It's like Teflon. No matter what he does, we never mention his name as far as getting fired. I love Mike Shanahan as a coach. I think he's one of the best minds we have in football. But sometimes it's time. It was time for Bill Cowher to get out of Pittsburgh. Not that they wouldn't have won, but it was time for Bill too. It's time for Mike Shanahan to make a change. Mike Shanahan will be employed faster, if he wants to, faster than any of the coaches available right now, if he wants it. Mike Shanahan, people will be going through the doors because he knows how to coach. Now, Mike, you better be prepared as a general manager or an owner in another city. Mike Shanahan does it Mike's way, and he's going to want a lot of power, but I understand. But it was time for Mike to get out of Denver. Denver needs a new direction, not because Shanahan can't coach, because the speeches and all that stuff and the grinding get old on players and players on coaches. Mike's probably a little bit relieved, but while he loves Denver and been there a long time, Mike Shanahan can coach just about, I mean, other than Cowher, he may be the hottest commodity of guys who have coached or been fired. So, shocking out of Denver. We haven't seen a change like this in Denver since Elway decided to retire. So, there's a lot going on there, and with a bright passing game there, now who they're going to bring in to continue to excel Cutler's career and continue to get him going in the right direction. There'll be other names, and there'll be other names we talk about. A little bit of football news. No shock that Larry Johnson wants out of Kansas City. I think it's time for them to cut that off and Larry to move on also. I really do. I think Chad Johnson, it's time for him to get out of Cincinnati and go play somewhere else. And I'm talking about for both sides, not just because the player deserves to get out, but the team and the player, like I said, change is good for a lot of people. LJ could still play. CJ could still play. The question is, can they still give their all and be that type of guy for those teams? I don't think so, and I think it's time. And Terrence Newman, he said exactly what I've been saying about the Cowboys in front of this camera from about week 6, okay, is that, and then after that, whoever was the leak out to the media, the player who's that guy who doesn't name it, is a coward and a punk, okay? That's what it is. Not Terrence Newman. Newman hit it. He said that the reason that team, that they had the locker room was divided apart because they had somebody who wouldn't put his name on those quotes that get out and break apart the locker room and divide it and tear it apart. And that player or players, whoever did that, is right, and Terrence Newman's right. And he's saying exactly what I've been saying about the Cowboys all along. The leadership on there sucks, okay? Simple, plain and simple. With all that town on the Dallas Cowboys, to be sitting home watching the playoffs with us is an embarrassment for them. Number 2 is Terrence Newman hit it right. Whoever the coward is that needs to go out there and talk to us in the media and behind it, put your name on it. Unless you want to be that big of a punk, put your name on it if you're a guy that's going to sell out your teammate or sell out a coach or sell out some other player. Terrence Newman said it's the best thing that could have happened to the Cowboys for Terrence Newman, a Pro Bowl player and a good guy and a guy who works hard, to come out and call out whoever the guy is or guys are in that locker room who won't put their name behind their quote, and it's torn it apart. The Dallas Cowboys football team needs help. Okay, it's the most dysfunctional franchise in the NFL when it comes to players that are talented. And we know about the Raiders. I'm not talking about bad franchise. I said dysfunctional. And the Dallas Cowboys know it. Terrence Newman, you're right. I'm finally glad somebody's agreeing and saying that the Dallas Cowboys, that there's some punk guy in that locker room as a teammate that doesn't have the guts to come out and put his name on it and say, oh, this is what receiver went to him and somebody went to this reporter. Terrence Newman called it exactly right. He and I are on the exact same page. And until Dallas finds some leadership from the top other than Jerry Jones, he's the biggest leader they got on the team, Jerry, and he can't make a tackle or call a play. I guess he could call a play if he wanted. So until they find some leadership, it's just a bunch of guys floundering around like a bunch of cattle out in the field. Brand them, stick them out there. Who the heck knows who's coming in first and last? You can't even herd those guys, okay? So he is exactly right as Terrence Newman. And I'm telling you, I'm a bright about the Cowboys and have been. This is a finesse team that shouldn't be watching during the playoffs. And until they find a leader or leaders on that team, we'll be sitting here talking about them the same way next year. I'm Sean Salisbury for Open Sports. It's going to be a great, great football week. And I'm going to hit you some news, 2 or 3 of these videos every day, because I'm just as fired up as if I was playing. And I wish I was, but I'm too old. So I'm going to get here to talk about it. We'll set you the game plans. We'll get you excited about it. And you know what? If other coaches take the firing or take the axe, which is unfortunate for their families, we'll talk about the ones who are possible replacements. And throughout the week, talk about the major candidates out there that could land a job. Shocking news again, Mike Shanahan out in Denver, because we didn't think Mike Shanahan could ever be fired. But guess what? If you're a head coach and you've never been fired, then you really haven't been a head coach. I'm Sean Salisbury for Open Sports. Enjoy your football week.
Think you can complete the drive? Play today and get an automatic entry to win daily prizes, 2 tickets to the big game, and a brand new car. Start your drive today at opensports.com.